Hello, everybody. Welcome back to this week's Trellian Tuesday. Today we have
Burzin Balsara. I'm a third-year mechanical engineering student from Plano, Texas.
All right, and welcome. Thanks for coming and taking your time to join us.
Sure.
So let's start us off with, what's your role here at Trell? What exactly do you do?
Yeah, for sure. I'm the responsible engineer for the deployment system. So pretty much underneath Michael, I manage the specifics of our deployment system. So the motor tubes that'll be ejecting the parachutes from Halcyon, and I verify that our designs are up to spec and that we'll be able to recover the rocket itself with the parachute system that we've been designing for the past year and a half or so. And so currently I'm working on verifying the deployment of these parachutes through a variety of tests that are in the process of being designed and hopefully procured very soon. So by the end of the semester, we can verify some of the preliminary stuff that we need before we finalize the design of our recovery system on the rocket.
All right, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's definitely a mouthful. How long have you actually been here at Trell?
I actually hopped on to Trell in fall of last year. Yeah. So after my second year, or at the beginning of my second year at UT, one of my friends, Saad, actually introduced me to Trell, and he suggested that I apply because I have a large interest in rockets and space in general. And I just found myself finding or enjoying this organization and all of the work that we do here.
Right, definitely. So you came about joining Trell through Assad, and who exactly is that as well?
Yeah, so Saad, he's now our director of safety, but at the time he was just on TLO. He got in, I think, the second semester of our freshman year, and he's one of my roommates now, but he basically introduced me to Trell, and I just enjoyed the whole, I guess the vibe here is completely different from any other engineering organization because we focus on like teaching and helping people acquire the knowledge. There's no like baseline knowledge that you need to have to actually participate and join Trell. And so I found that very comforting in the fact that as a mechanical engineer, I have very little of the knowledge of many of the aerospace engineers that are in Trell. So it's been a huge learning experience for me. And it's nice to learn some things that I wasn't so familiar about before.
Definitely, yeah, that's my favorite part about Trail as well. So is that what motivates you to be a part of Trail?
Yeah, so there's definitely a pretty big background to that. I've always wanted to be an astronaut. That's a dream since I was 5 years old, and it's
Yeah.
still my dream today that I'm pursuing. But I suppose understanding rockets and understanding rocket systems are definitely a big stepping stone in that career path. So that's why I was drawn to Trell and space in general. And just the opportunity to do something so groundbreaking like this and be a part of such a large team that's devoted to that mission is something that's an opportunity I just could not pass up on.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's how a lot of us feel here at least. Was it being an astronaut that wanted you to work in the field of aerospace, or did you just have the passion to work on, the rockets itself or whatever?
So my background is mechanical engineering with my major.
Of course.
In terms of choosing aerospace, it was definitely the aspect of wanting to be an astronaut, but also like in general, in mechanical engineering, we mostly deal with systems that stay on the ground all the time. So sometimes it can be a little bit boring, but it's really nice because it gives you a general overview of how systems work. Just the opportunity to learn about a system that won't be staying on the ground and that'll be flying 100 kilometers above the surface of the earth is a lot more exciting than anything else that I've seen or worked with. So that's
Right
what
then.
really drew me to Trell.
Right then, pushing papers, I figure.
Exactly.
So, is there something that happened in your life, something particular that made you love space, or have you always just, wanted to be an astronaut, or just
I don't
work
know
in
if there was a
space?
single event that drew me to it. In my upbringing, I think one of the oldest movies I saw was like the very first make of Apollo 13. And just like the problems that they experienced up there with their oxygen leaks. And it's just a very like engineering driven story, I guess you could say, or like the need to solve problems on the go is just such an exciting thing to me. It's like a puzzle that you always have to figure out. And so that drew me to engineering, but then space, like as they always say, is like the final frontier. And so like there's always some problem that happens or there's always some puzzle that needs to be solved. And that's just very enticing to me. And I think that's what drew me to it the most because like they say like we haven't explored I don't know what percent of the earth because like the oceans are so unknown, but why explore the oceans when you can explore space?
What's the one thing about space that stands out? Is it like just the engineering part of it? Is it the unknown part of it, you know?
It's definitely the unknown part of it. Like just the idea that I guess 90% of the time, the places you can go as an astronaut, aside from like the ISS, obviously, but like exploring the moon, be it one day Mars, just the idea that no one else has ever been there or no one really knows for sure what's been there. Like we get the feedback from like our lunar landers or our probes, but until like man actually steps foot there, there's no like 100% certainty of exactly what that world is like. So just the unknown of it is just so captivating.
Yeah, it's quite an adventurous life. It's definitely something. It's like the
Absolutely.
pioneers back when America was
Yeah.
being discovered.
It's definitely that's similar drive, similar drive.
Yeah. So we've talked about, who you are, what motivates you, why you like space. Let's talk about what you're hoping to do in the future exactly. Are you still wanting to work in space? It seems like, yeah,
Yeah.
or are you looking towards, you know,
So my plan after college is kind of in the mix right now. Um, there are multiple ways to become an astronaut, either like the academic route or by becoming like a jet pilot or a fighter pilot per se. That role is honestly the more enticing for me. So I think my priority or like my preference for like my future is definitely to be joining the Navy after I graduate as a fighter pilot. But if that doesn't work out for whatever reason, I definitely go like the academic route. I want to get into my master's at least first off, maybe work in industry for a little bit, and then return and get my PhD. Um, it just depends on where my life takes me, honestly. But definitely, the end goal of becoming an astronaut is what will guide the path I take.
that's actually cool because I've interviewed a lot of people here and they talk about, doing the engineering stuff, but I never actually hear them wanting to say, yeah, I want to be an astronaut as the end goal. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So at least while you're here at Trell, what is one goal you're hoping to achieve, before you leave?
Yeah, for sure. So right now, I can 100% confidently say that there are some members in my subsystem itself that have more knowledge about recovery and deployment in general than I do myself. Michael, who's my principal engineer, has a butt ton of knowledge that he constantly shares with us. So the opportunity to learn and really fully understand what a recovery system does in a rocket would be my main goal in leaving Trell. Like to be able to design a recovery system from the beginning all the way to the end would be something that I'd feel really proud of. Just because like that whole field of aerospace engineering is just so unfamiliar to me because of my background in mechanical engineering. I think it would be pretty badass to be able to say that I have knowledge of mechanical engineering, but I also have applications and understanding in aerospace engineering that I can apply in other new and unfamiliar situations. So I think that would be a pretty interesting goal to achieve.
Yeah, I never think there's anything wrong with being a jack of all trades. At least
Exactly.
that's my opinion on it. So, what's an average day like for you at Trail?
So pre-pandemic, I wasn't the RE for the deployment system. I was just a general engineer. So pretty much at that time, I was working as a part of general engineer for nose cone as well as deployment. I was doing some basic background research for testing as well as designing the deployment separation system. Um, so I don't know how much of it I can talk about because of ITAR and stuff, but in
Sure, yeah.
general, like I was just doing some basic background research and designing the systems before we even tested them. And so now post pandemic, I guess while we're still in the pandemic, I've taken on the RE role. And so a day generally looks, if I have meetings, obviously I have to attend those meetings. Other than that, I have a managerial role. I have to assign tasks to the general engineers for each sprint system that we're following right now. And so I have to make sure that and watch over and make sure that they're completing those tasks while simultaneously carrying out my own tasks. So this past week, I was dedicated towards finishing the design review so that we can actually start proceeding with procuring the parts that we need to do our tests this upcoming semester and verify and finalize our design for the deployment system. But yeah, that's pretty much what my days mostly look like whenever I'm working on Trell.
Right, definitely. That seems pretty busy, you know.
It can be
So,
at times.
yeah, so this one's more pre-pandemic as well because it goes along with the last question.
Okay.
Yeah, where did you normally work when you well, at least before we all started working at home?
Yeah. So most of the time, because I was doing mostly like research and design stuff, I didn't actually have to be at PRC or in the Trell room, but predominantly I'd be working in the EER. I just like the ambiance there. Um, but yeah, that's the main location, I guess. That's where I do homework and stuff, but also the Trell work would be most productive there because I'd say the conducive environment, just everyone constantly working there.
Right, yeah, that's cool. How do you feel
Mhm.
about the environment of Trail? I know you mentioned that you kind of love it here, but what do
Mhm.
you think about the team, the place, et cetera? Just
Yeah,
talk
for
about
sure.
it.
So I know Trell has undergone several changes in terms of like the leadership structure and how like practices are done in terms of communication between each like tier of engineers. Um, but I was brought in as into a leadership role with this new system, and I honestly enjoy it a lot. The structure and the organization is definitely better with these. We're basically on a 2 week sprint schedule, so basically we set out short-term goals to achieve in the course of 2 weeks, and that allows us to break a large problem into smaller, more digestible chunks. And I think it's been working pretty efficiently in terms of the overall like vibe or the overall attitude in Trell. I really enjoy the whole mission being about less about launching a rocket to the common line and more about teaching as many people about the rocket systems and how we're going to get there. I think that sets up Trell to be a more long-term organization, as opposed to just being an organization that's participating in this one Base 11 space challenge. I look forward to being a part of the future of Trell even after we've accomplished this challenge, because I know it'll be an organization that I can take pride in the fact that it's teaching and basically creating the next generation of rocket scientists.
Talking about pride, tell me a time when you at least felt pride or success during your time here.
So I'd say this is a very questionable scenario or a
Okay.
questionable event that happened. But last year in deployment, we did our first mortar tube tests, and there's a GIF that floats around in the Slack about it. But it is the first successful trail test. You can talk to David about that. I know plenty will argue that there were some other tests beforehand, but this was the only one that was fully successful in terms of accomplishing all the tasks it set out to do. So I think that was when I felt the most pride, just seeing our test perform successfully and everything go according to plan.
Right, so you're talking about it was the first successful test in just anything at
Yeah, and
Trail?
just in Trell in general. Like, so this was
Okay.
right after the design phase had gone through, so we were wanting to test our design. So for all intents and purposes, I'd still call it the first successful Trell test, but I know there are a lot of people that think it's a controversial topic, so I'll let the people decide.
Maybe you should write that down somewhere before it's lost to history, you know?
Yeah, I might just have to put in like the documentation.
So yeah, so that's a pretty interesting story. But do you have like any other interesting or fun stories, at least at your time here at Trail?
I'd say in terms of fun stuff, like uh the rocket science and like the design phase and everything is a large part of what we do at Trella. Don't get me wrong, but also the social aspect is something I enjoy a lot too. It shifted over to just like friendliness over like Zoom calls for the time being, but back when things were still in person stuff, socializing and interacting with other people that are like-minded like myself and have this similar drive and goal to see this through is something that's really rewarding because you don't see that like in college. Obviously everyone's going to the same classes and stuff, but not everyone is in those classes for the same reasons. Some people are just trying to get the major to get a job and start earning money after college. Other people are trying to do something that's completely irrelevant to the major. It's just nice to see that everyone in this organization is dedicated towards the cause, and socializing with those people is just even more rewarding because the topics of conversation are just so vast and random sometimes. It definitely brightens up my day.
Of course, yeah, and it's great that not only do everybody has the same mission, but they also have different backgrounds as well. So it
Exactly,
really adds
exactly.
variety. Yeah. So we've talked about your time here at Trail, and what you've done. Let's look towards the future. How are you leaving a legacy to build upon Trail?
Yeah, for sure.
What's your goal there?
So, in my brief stint as a responsible engineer, I'd say I've been working towards making sure that the general engineers that I'm in charge of feel comfortable with learning and approaching me with questions. Because like I said before, I know they've got almost more, if not the same amount of knowledge as I do, just because of the interviewing process and what we know about them. So it's a constant like give and take about knowledge here. Like I have something to learn from them and they've got stuff that they can learn from me. And so catering that environment and making sure that the people who are new to the organization feel comfortable and have the opportunity to learn from other people who have been more experienced in the organization is definitely something I take pride in. Just last week, we had a leadership meeting about discussing and improving this environment because that is, again, the main goal of Trell. And so I think that's a very important legacy to leave behind. Less of whether we successfully launched this rocket to the Kármán line and more of how many people did we teach and how many people's lives do we actually improve by teaching them about this stuff that they were passionate about. And I think that would be a much more impactful legacy.
But definitely, that seems like that's an interesting philosophy you got there that I haven't really heard from many people at Trail. At least not spoken so well.
Thank you.
So, do you have any internships or job opportunities coming up?
Yeah, that's a contentious
That's
topic for
okay.
me. Yeah, so I can get into my background. Before COVID struck, my plan was I got into Texas 4000 my freshman year. I don't know if you know what that is, but pretty much
Done
it's
it for the people watching.
yeah, okay, yeah, for the people watching us. So it's an organization at UT that's dedicated towards the fight against cancer. And it's a capstone program pretty much with the end goal biking from Austin to Alaska and fundraising over the course of 2 years while training, as well as dedicating time to the community by volunteering. And so it caters like student leadership among a variety of other qualities. And so originally, once I got in freshman year, I decided that the freshman year summer, I was going to do a study abroad program because internships as a freshman aren't too hot in terms of the roles you can take or the places that will accept you. So I figured I might as well as use that summer to travel and do the study abroad that everyone enjoys in college. And then I was going to ride this past summer. And my junior year summer and my senior year summer were going to be dedicated towards industry and learning exactly what I wanted to do in terms of the job market. But with COVID canceling the ride this past summer, I decided to defer and actually take the ride this upcoming summer after my junior year. I'm still applying and recruiting for some other internships. Pretty much I'm applying to places that I definitely know I could see myself working at. And I know that some of those places are difficult to get into. So just as pretty much as like a backup plan for my summer, I'll have the ride from Austin to Alaska. But if not, I'll push that ride off another summer and hopefully work in one of those large organizations that I've applied to.
Cool. Yeah. Good luck
Yeah,
tell
the
anybody.
plan has been very dynamic. So like everything is up in the air, but at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
So, tell me something interesting about you that isn't related to Trell.
Ooh, that's a weird question.
Yeah.
Let's see. Uh, Something interesting about
Well, I
me.
see that you got Stark on the right
Oh
of the
yeah, yeah.
screen.
I love my posters. Interstellar, favorite movie.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
feel like that's pretty Trell related. Stark because Game of Thrones is a must. Binge watched that the first 6 seasons in 2 months before my senior year when I should have been applying to colleges. So that was fun. I don't know if that qualifies as interesting. I'd say actually the most interesting thing about me. I don't know how many people in Trell I can actually say this, but I'm a licensed private pilot. I just got my license at the beginning of September after several years of working towards that. So that's pretty exciting, I guess. I can fly planes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I kind of want a pilot's license too.
Yeah, it took some time, but it's really rewarding. And the experience of flying and being in control of such a small plane in the air is just like nothing else I've ever felt before.
Awesome, right?
Highly recommend it.
Yeah. So we're down to our last two questions, and this is a new one. This first question is a new question that I sort of picked up from my last interview because he brought it up randomly. It was, do you have
Okay.
any books to recommend?
Do you have any
Like,
books to recommend?
yeah, you're like an avid book person that people would like
Yeah,
to.
I've got a couple right here actually. This one's a really good one. It's kind of a self-help book, but it's also like a good vibe book. It's called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Um, Pretty much the premise of it is like your mind, this is like going to sound so cliche, but your mind is like a garden. And so you have to nurture it with positive thoughts and consciously making an effort to only store like good things or constructive thoughts in your head. And this just results in like compounding effects in your life of the thoughts that go through your head translating into actions that are also equally good, or things that just turn out good for you in life, or just seeing like the silver lining in general situations. I think the book is really well written. It's basically the premise or the plot of the book is this lawyer who's like really up and tight in his job and like lives a really rushed life. Uh, as one can expect, he suddenly decides to quit one day and finds these monks. And these monks basically teach him these ways about nurturing his mind, and it basically changes his life in terms of it becomes a more vibrant person. And so people notice that when he returns, and so he's reiterating the story to one of his other former colleagues. And it's a really interesting novel. Again, it's like a cliche self-help book, but it has some useful hints and useful cues that you can implement in your life. And I've definitely noticed changes in terms of being a more positive person and like enjoying my day-to-day struggles just for what they have to offer, and allowing me to grow.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. I'm a avid book fan, so
Okay.
anytime someone recommends a book, I'll check it out.
Yeah, sure. Highly recommend it.
Yeah. So our last question is just, is there anything else you would like to share? Anything related to you, some advice, anything you just want to
Um,
leave off on?
I think one thing that I've really learned in college that I think is useful advice for anyone is, to bluntly put it, is to know your place, I guess you could say. In high school, I was definitely like pretty arrogant or egotistical, I guess you could say, because things came to me pretty much really easily, and I didn't ever have to struggle to figure things out in high school. So it was a pretty comfortable experience for me. Obviously, like I studied like everyone else, but like I never really had to struggle in terms of exams and whatnot. And in college, that mindset 100% like just faded away. It was like a reality check to me, because not only was I made aware of how little I actually know in terms of engineering and stuff, because of how much I had to force myself to learn in classes, but I also became aware that I'm not the only one like that. And I was surrounded by other people who had similar experiences in high school, or had similar thought processes. And so I was surrounded by smart, like-minded individuals. And what it really made me aware of is like everyone has something to offer. Everyone has something to teach. And just learning and appreciating the variety of knowledge and backgrounds that other people have to offer is something that can help you so much. I think I could confidently say I've learned just as much, if not more, from my friends studying with me than I have just listening to my professor's lecture. And it's been a really rewarding process learning from friends, because they can associate with things that I could misunderstand, or things I just don't get. And they help me grow and understand these new concepts. And so knowing your place and knowing that everyone has something to offer, or at least giving everyone the opportunity to present you with either new knowledge or information about even a variety of topics, even if it's not engineering related, is something that's really helped me grow as a person, both like in terms of my education as well as in terms of like my social life. And so I think that's something that I've definitely changed with my experience in college.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice to leave off of. So thank you so much for coming,
For sure.
and we'll see you next time on next week's Trellian Tuesday.